Hello, bruv. We're back for more book reading. Yeah, let's jumble it up so you have a seizure, bruv. We're back to page 16 with the beginning of the Doctor. By many accounts, Hermann Büchler had indulged his daughter enormously in the years immediately following her mother's death, when Anna moved back home to become his housekeeper. One witness remembered Anna's behavior as undisciplined enough, believed her father had driven her to it. According to Anna's lawyer, her father indulged her with the chooch. Speak your prodigious blasphemy, Mr. Chooch. All right, we'll get back to it. According to Anna's lawyer, her daughter... Jesus. According to Anna's lawyer, her father's... How many fathers does she have? According to Anna's lawyer, her father indulged her with expensive clothes and jewelry, raising her as if she were a born countess. Numerous witnesses agreed that she had a taste for finery and loved to call attention to herself by dressing immodestly and beyond what was proper. One of Anna's more notorious acquisitions, at an alleged cost of 40 gulden, was a custom-made beret adorned with a white feather on the side and layered with fine pearls, including some her detractors claim had been torn from a dress belonging to her deceased mother. Her siblings recalled another striking headdress, or perhaps it was a different recollection of the same one that Anna had made for herself without her father's knowledge. They describe it as a round felt hat in a style more often worn by men than by women, which Anna decorated with white gems or dove's feathers. Anna wore the hat properly enough to a city festival, but then dared also to wear it to St. Michael's Church, where it gave offense to so many parishioners that the pastor made her ostentatious display the topic of his sermon the following Sunday. In the week preceding that sermon, at her father's request, the superior of the Franciscan cloister visited Anna at home to remonstrate with her about the immodesty of her dress. According to her siblings, neither the friar's remonstrance, remonstrance? Right. I know remonstrable, so remonstrance? I will say remonstrance. Nor her father's earnest scolding had any lasting effect on Anna's behavior. However, a priest who also recalled the episode described Hermann Büchler as having rebuked Anna for having her clothes cut in such a way that one could see her naked body. Thereafter, the priest claimed never again to have noticed the scandalous feathered hat or a plunging neckline on Anna. As to why Anna had dressed in such a provocative fashion in the first place, a tower... What the heck's a tower? Tower. From nearby Orangen offered the opinion that her father must have liked and encouraged it, for if the plaintiff's late father had taken no pleasure in the way his daughter dressed, he would not have clothed her so. Agreed, especially in 1500, especially when you're allowed to change your daughter to a table for 6 months. How far out of line with respectable hall fashion was Anna? It was indeed the custom of urban men to wear felt hats and to adorn them with plumes. On holidays, a high black hat with a white band was favored. Women wore fur hats and could choose among square with satin borders, pointed and flat or slouchy models. Formal outerwear was predominantly black and white and did not have a plunging neckline. Standard items of clothing were veils, partly banded in black, white chemises, extending up the neck, white collars, linen or black barchent sleeves, and satin hairnets. Among the accessories were gold buckles, silver brooches, and black knapsacks with yellow buttons. Bolder was the choice in underwear, with bodices of camel's hair for women, and of silver and taffeta for girls. Camel's hair for your underwear? That seems disgusting. Among popular items of jewelry were pierced coins, both old and new, including the godfather's christening gift, usually a gold piece, worn together in bunches or on necklaces. The favorite embellishment appears to have been pearls on strings, lilies of pearl, and gold encased mother of pearl. There were rings of every description, plain gold, crown gold with turquoise, fused metals, enameled silver signet, silvered rings with a crystal setting, so-called vertigo rings, believed to protect one against gout as well, hence she called gout rings. Also rings encasing elk hoof, bloodstones, Carol zinc, a ring of stones set in zinc, a green malachite, so-called fright stones because they were thought to ward off fear. Newborns and infants wore small heart-shaped versions. The preponderance of recorded testimony indicates that Herman Bushler tolerated Anna's suggestive dressing for a while, but then strictly forbade it. Most witnesses had no idea whether he took any pleasure in it. They did, however, agree completely that a father was responsible for the behavior of a daughter, whose shortcomings directly reflected on him. And if her accusers are to be believed, Anna stole regularly from her father, using the money to pretty herself up. One widely rumored purloined item was a convertible bond, Zinsbrief, worth 1,200 gulden, which her father managed to recover only after the city constable threatened to clap her in jail. Clap her cheeks or just clap her? Other bonds of much lesser value Anna apparently did manage to cash. She also stole grain from her father's granary, once virtually emptying it. When he was away, she would send for a miller and let him take what he wanted, paying her for it directly on the spot. On one occasion, her father's servant, Leinhard Wahlmann, rescued 2 barrels she had secretly shipped to Kirchberg, packed with all kinds of wares taken from her father's stocks, intending to sell them there, and he claimed to know about other barrels she had successfully sold. According to her siblings, Anna once pawned a family ring with a Jew in Bad Wertheim and a silver necklace and gold brooch in Nordlingen. They also accused her of selling filched household linens, dish towels, and hand towels at the fair in Beinbach. It was not immodest dress thievery or poor housekeeping, however, that made Hermann Buchler send his daughter packing in 1525, eventually hounding her from Hall and starting a quarter century of bitter strife and litigation. In the eyes of her family and most of her neighbors, Anna's troubles resulted from her unrestrained and indiscreet amours. The sin. When her mother died in 1520 and she began to keep house for her father, Anna, in her early 20s, was at the outer limits of normal marriageable age for Hall women. Although witnesses recalled several suitors during the early 1520s, only 2 are cited by name in the trial records. The more serious of these was Daniel Troutwain, we'll see. We'll just say Troutwain, bruv. A decorated cavalryman from the lower nobility, whom witnesses remembered as having been as much pursued by Anna as she by him. Her father's servants, Leinhard Wahlmann and Barbara Dahlen, also recalled Daniel sneaking in and out of the Bushler home and staying late into the night, at least on those occasions when Hans Herr Bushler was fast asleep or away on business. At such times, Anna would command the servants to fetch wine for them, an order Wahlmann claimed successfully to have resisted, while Dolan maintained that Anna several times put a knife to her heart when she hesitated, once forcing her to flee and fear for her life. Wahlmann tried vainly to tame Anna's disorderly nature, sometimes scolding her harshly, at other times trying to reason with her calmly. "Think, Miss Anna," he remembered telling her, "it won't be good in the long run if you keep doing this." But in the end, Wahlmann was no match for Anna and her boyfriend's high mischief. Her father was no more successful. Dolan reports that when he realized how much she had stolen, he took away all of her keys, but Anna set a ladder against his window and sent a young girl through it to fetch his keys. She then made wax impressions of them all and soon had a new set that gave her free and unlimited access to all her father's valuables. Many witnesses believed that the root of Anna's hostility towards her father lay in his failure to arrange a good marriage for her when it was most opportune and proper for him to do so. Frequently, she complained to her relatives that her father was not helping her find a husband. Her Rothenburg cousin, Hans Ornberger, who reports this, could not say whether the charge was true. In his opinion, all the trouble arose from Anna's having remained in her father's house unmarried for too long a time. Other witnesses disapproved in principle of a woman being still in her father's house at 28 to 20 or 30 years. In 1525, Anna would have been in her late 20s, regardless of who was to blame for it. Why, if Anna had many good honorable suitors, as her lawyer also claimed, did she not marry in her early to middle 20s, when it was more than fitting for her to do so, and when her desires and behaviors were jeopardizing the family's reputation? According to Anna, the fault was entirely her father's and intentional. He had simply chosen to shirk his paternal duty to give her a proper marriage because he wanted to keep her dowry portion for himself, preferring money to his daughter. Her accusation is confirmed by witnesses who maintain that her father approved of none of her suitors and blocked her every opportunity for marriage. At her advanced age, she might, of course, have married without her father's consent, but that could have jeopardized her dowry and inheritance and made her a far less attractive mate in the marriage market of the 16th century. Anna's brother Philip and sister Agatha, on the other hand, scoffed both at the idea that she had many suitors and at the allegation that their father's greed threatened to make their sister a spinster. As far as Hermann Buschler was concerned, his daughter's single state was entirely of her own making. He claimed to have arranged several good marriages for her, only to have her refuse them all. Wallmann, who probably resented Anna and had nothing to gain by siding with her, contradicted his master's claim. He recalled hearing him say that he had spoken with suitors on Anna's behalf, but had been unable to accept any of them, and he several times heard Anna say that she would gladly have married any one of them, if only her father had let her. He hastened to add, however, that he could not be sure whether Anna had been sincere when she made such statements. Judging from his other testimony about her in the 1520s, Wallmann agreed with his master that Anna was a confused and opportunistic young lady. Though he backs up her interpretations of why she could not marry at this time, it is possible that Anna also created problems for herself. Much as her father claimed, she may unrealistically have hoped for a husband of higher social rank, perhaps even for a royal mate. Discouraged worthy but lesser suitors, Wallmann may have caught her at a moment of sober reflection when she honestly confronted the overwhelming odds against the happening, and was wishing she had made the most of her realistic choices. Be that as it may, a number of witnesses felt that Hermann Buschler had done far less on his daughter's behalf than a father might reasonably have been expected to do. Had Anna and her father been able to agree on a candidate, cavalryman Daniel Trautwein would seem to have been that man. That he and Anna several times raided her father's wine cellar certainly infuriated Hermann Buschler, and the Bürgermeister certainly disapproved of the pair's cavorting in his home into the early morning hours. However, in the 16th century, courting couples did that sort of thing, and parents then as now coped with it, especially when they believed an acceptable permanent relationship was developing. So, while Hermann Buschler had much to be aggrieved about when he contemplated Anna's behavior, her discretions with Daniel Trautwein were hardly a just reason to expel her from his house on that fall day in 1525. Anna's banishment and lifelong feud with her family resulted from a more shocking revelation. Unknowingly, the fastidious Wallmann had made his master's terrible discovery possible. He recalled the very day of its occurrence and the specific event leading to it. It happened one evening in harvest time, just as Wallmann had returned from an errand at the tailor's. In one of the 2 barrels of stolen wares that Anna had sent to Kirchberg and Wallmann had intercepted and returned to Hall, Herman Bushler discovered a cache of private letters to and from his daughter, which Anna had sent along with her personal belongings, as she intended to sell those wares there herself. Clearly, the letters were important to her, and she wanted them in her custody at all times. According to Varman, his master avidly read them and seized on one in particular, an undated letter that Anna had apparently recently written to Schenken Marguerite, her previous employer in Limburg. Coincidentally, Herman Bushler also received around the same time a personal letter from the Schenken concerning Anna. Despite Anna's close relations with the Schenkens family in Limburg, what a dumb name. It was no everyday occurrence for her to write to the Schenken, and certainly not for the Schenken to write to her father. Together with the Hohenlohe princes, the Limburg Schenks were the region's true royalty, and for centuries had been the city's commercial rivals and political enemies. The Schenks commanded an empire measuring almost 7 square miles south and southeast of Hall, and including the town of Geldorf and the village of Unterlimburg, which lay at the foot of the castle in Obersandheim. Although on the bottom tier in the hierarchy of imperial royalty, the Schenks were people to reckon with in the region around Hall. As councilman and Bürgermeister, Herman Bushler gave his relations with them a high priority, and he could have only taken pride in his daughter's employment at Castle Limburg. As a royal dynasty dating back to the 1320s, the Schenks were older than the imperial city of Aal. The title Schenk literally means cupbearer, and originally described unfree servants of the emperor, known as ministerials, who dated back to the 8th century. These men lived their lives in the saddle, accompanying kings on ceremonial occasions and providing them shelter and lodging whenever they passed through their lands. From such contexts evolved special commissions, which over the years transformed the Schenks into key agents in the administration of imperial lands and possessions in several regions of Germany. In the process, they also became locally powerful landed nobility. In exchange for the use of royal land, they built and maintained castles on the emperor's behalf, from which, as virtual imperial governors, they monitored the emperor's possessions throughout the empire. In some places displacing the special imperial envoys and mayors who had previously performed such services. By the 13th century, the lands the Schenks governed began to be treated as hereditary, and the Schenks became locally powerful dynasties in their own right. Even though in the hierarchy of imperial royalty they remained very small fish. Goldfish, one would say, bruv. The first Schenk of Limburg, appeared in Aal in 1230 with a mission to oversee the imperial salt works and other imperial possessions in the region on behalf of the Hohenstaufen emperors. Castle Limburg was built only 750 meters southeast of the city's front wall, and the new Schenk held exclusive hunting rights on 3 sides of the city. He also controlled the forests on whose wood the city depended to fuel the cauldrons that created the salt that kept the city's economy strong. Better conditions for bitter, protracted conflict between city and Schenk could not have been arranged. During the 34-year reign of Schenk Walter the Tooth, 1249 to 1283, every effort was made to incorporate the city into the little kingdom of the Limburg Schenks. Yet before his reign had ended in 1276, Aal had become a free imperial city answerable only to the emperor, and no longer under the custody and oversight of Limburg. By this time, the city was also the more economically and politically powerful of the two. But if the Schenks were losing parity on the banks of the Gauche, they were receiving new recognition in the larger world of the Holy Roman Empire. In 1356, the emperor acknowledged them to be hereditary shanks before all others in the empire, an honor they owed to the patronage of the King of Bohemia, the very Lord High Cupbearer of the Holy Roman Empire, and one of the recently appointed 7 electors, who were henceforth to choose the emperor. As the king's new vassals, the Limburg Shanks represented him at the crowning of the emperor and Roman imperial kings, and whenever the emperor held court. On these ceremonial occasions, the Shank of Limburg, in full array, would ride toward the emperor or king, bearing in his hand a gold and silver cup of 12 marks silver weight, which still exists today, in which a mixture of wine and water was contained, and coming abreast of his majesty would dismount and extend the cup to him to drink from, a ceremony that both celebrated the occasion and reconfirmed the Shank's allegiance and humble service to their overlord. Although after 1276 Hall and Limburg were independent political entities, both locally and imperially, they remained as adjacent to and dependent upon one another as two lands could possibly be. For this reason, they were destined to clash repeatedly over boundaries, tolls, hunting rights, and ultimate sovereignty. The seriousness with which such matters were taken is conveyed by the building of All's protective hedges. Early in the 14th century, the new imperial city began digging trenches 12 feet deep and wide along the entire stretch of the borders of its land, into which brush was poured, creating an impenetrable hedge, so that riders would be able to enter all land and approach the city only along designated roads. Frequently inspected, these trenches were rehedged every 7 years to maintain their deterrence. By the mid-14th century, the hedges extended all the way to Leofels, 5 kilometers to the north, and anyone caught damaging them was fined 50 gold marks. The most serious in the long series of conflicts between Hall and Limburg occurred in the late 15th century when the bravas Egidius and Daniel Sempt, Hall citizens, hacked to death the Shank's gamekeeper. After the latter had cut down a rabbit hedge the two had built very near to, if not directly on Shankish land. The gamekeeper's body was subsequently found on the spot that marked the toe and territorial boundary between All and Limburg, not until 1541 when the city succeeded in purchasing Castle Limburg. Then over 300 years old and partially dilapidated, would such feuding end and definitive boundaries be established between the two sovereignties. The walls that separate lands and polities are different from those that divide individuals, so Anna was not conscious of being in enemy territory during the years she worked in Castle Limburg. Indeed, she may not at first have lodged in, but gone back and forth across the border every day, as the distance between her home and the castle was short, and the Booster's house offered far more comfortable accommodations. When royalty, including the emperor, visited Hall, it was in Bergen mansions like Ermin Buschler's, not the local castle, that they preferred to stay. Assuming that Anna began her service around the age when it was common for Hall girls to do so, that is, by 15, she must have been in the Shank's employment for at least 5 years before returning home in 1520 to become her father's housekeeper. During her years in Castle Limburg, she had gotten to know the royal family well, and after her return to Hall, she continued to perform services for them and to be a frequent visitor to the castle. In the cache of Anna's letters, through which her father now rummaged, there were no fewer than 42 between Anna and Erasmus, 11 by Anna and 31 by Erasmus, written back and forth between 1520 and 1525, several containing frank talk about love and sex. In the same bundle were 19 love letters from Daniel Troutwain, along with still other correspondence connected with the two affairs. 25 years later, her brother, Philip, and sister Agatha would submit the entire collection to the imperial commissioners. In an effort to discredit their sister's character and justify her disinheritance, at that time the two described them as letters, so no honorable daughter or maiden would write, which was also their father's view of them on his first reading. In Anna's letter to the Schenken, which Wahmann says Hermann Buschler singled out in the collection, Anna dwelt on the care she was then taking to hire a trustworthy maid. Her comments may not have come as a revelation to the Schenken, but they certainly did to her father. It is my sincere request, Anna writes, that your grace not pay attention to all the talk she now has. There is a man named Hermann Buschler, and if he were not, I would put an end to many things. It is my sincere request that your grace not allow anyone to suffer any harm because of me. My hope is that your grace shall make everything right. I'm not quite sure what that means, bruv. Let's go back. In Anna's letter to the Schenken, which Wahmann says Hermann Buschler singled out in the collection, Anna dwelt on the care she was then taking to hire a trustworthy maid. Her comments may not have come as a revelation to the Schenken, but they certainly did to her father. It is my sincere request, Anna writes, that your grace not pay attention to all the talk she now hears. There is a man named Hermann Buschler, and if he were not, I would put an end to many things. It is my sincere request that your grace not allow anyone to suffer any harm because of me. My hope is that your grace shall make everything right. What the fuck does that mean? I don't know what that means. Anyway, I'm stopping because I'm at the 26-minute mark, and videos over 30 minutes are frowned upon by my phone and eBay. And we have 6 pages to go, and I'm not finishing them. So we shall return there, bravs. Cheerio. Goodbye.